Hello and welcome. Today we're having the 6th episode of our eCommerce DevCast. Our hosts Vladislav Podorozhny, software architect and partner at Runnisroot. Hello, Vlad.
Hey guys.
And Vitaly Boyko, software engineer at the Carry Company. Hello, Vitaly.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, this is Alexander Kravchuk. Before we dive into today's topic, it is autumn, which means that the conference season in full swing. Meet Magento Canada conference will take place in Toronto on November 13th, and we are excited to share a 20% discount with our listeners for an entry ticket. Just use the promo code VIP on the conference website checkout to claim it. Thank you. The topic we are discovering today is related to automatic testing, and I would like to start the discussion from asking the simple question. Guys, could you tell me what the hell is automated tests? And when you answer, please tell it in the way that when I show this video to my grandma, she also can understand what it is about. So who want to be the first?
I want to be the first.
Yeah,
I have an answer.
Please.
Automated testing is once you have a test, you're pressing the button and it's testing everything.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's super simplified, right? So instead of the guy that is doing it manually and going there and checking how the things work and does they work properly based on the requirements, we have automated scripts. We have automated tools that are doing it instead of him. How exactly it's done? There are various ways, and here actually the rabbit hole starts, right? And yeah, there are various levels of testing and so on and so on. But simple thing, you have a website, you want to check out, does the button works? And this button should show you a pop-up with the congratulations message, right? You can do it in two ways. You can hire the quality assurance engineer that will gonna test this button and go there and press the button in various browsers and see that the result is actually the pop-up with a congratulations message, or you write down the script that will gonna run it on many browsers or on a specific one that you are focused on, etc. And it will be executed after every change you're making on your website or by the schedule or whatever. So that's a super simplified one. I hope your grandma understands what his website is. Yeah, so that's the maximum that I could do. That's it.
Okay, interesting. And your point is that auto tests, well, I'm just because you started speaking and I'm started thinking, can we save money on auto tests? Like you said that the idea is to replace the human and run the checks without a person sitting in the front of the computer and clicking your site. Instead, you have a script that doing the same. So that's your main idea, that auto tests supposed to replace the human?
No, that's not my main idea. I don't think that auto tests should replace the human. They should help humans, quality assurance engineers and quality automation engineers to figure out is the quality good enough or not. So not the saving money, that's not the main idea, is to get the quality on another level. But Vitaly, you were not saying anything about what automated test for you, right? What is that? Explain it to the grandma of Alexander.
Yeah, I believe there are not only the idea of testing, but also it's complementary for development, because you can use tests for make your program more structured, and contradictionally to like a regular way of development, you shape up your program accordingly to test scenarios you developed previously. It's called test-driven development. So there are like multiple way of using and benefiting from testing, and whether or not it makes a program cheaper, it depends on requirement. Therefore, there are like different ways of using automated tests. And for example, if your program is not that big, it's some kind of just script to play around and throw away, maybe it doesn't make sense to do any test-driven development and automating testing. But if you are developing some huge business-related program, it's gonna be beneficial to use automated tests, because it's gonna reduce cost long-term when you refactoring code or adding new features. It makes life easier for development to develop things.
So me as a grandma would be shocked, to be honest. Yeah.
I'm just sitting in the
Grandma doesn't know those. Okay, little boy. Tell me, please, what are all those terms you're talking about?
So, yeah. Could you just make it simpler and try to fit into one sentence?
I believe we can get away without using some analogies. I would say automated tests, they are kind of like infrastructure, like highways. Country definitely can function without highways. You can use rural roads to deliver products, but it's way handy to use highways.
Didn't get this analogy. I would not say it's bad, it's just not at the point.
I really like this analogy. Basically, if we are talking that the infrastructure in general is the development process and covering everything with tests and setting up CTCI. It's allow you to build a highway so you can just fastly deliver new things, new changes, new code to your system. And if you don't have this infrastructure, it rather will be some countryside road when you need to drive, and especially in the East Europe, you need to ride around all these holes and rocks that you can find on these roads. Do I correctly understood your analogy, Vitali?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Great.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Good. So
I'm
now,
sorry, can I put on one
of
thing?
course,
So
please.
we actually discussed what autotest is, right? And we started talking about the purpose and the problems that they are solving, right? And that's
Yes.
one of those. Make the highway to deliver things faster. And the second one is to get the better quality, right? That's
Yes.
the idea. Okay. Just wanted to sum that up. Thanks.
Yeah. If you ask me, if I see it like a glue for your application, for your solution that you can use to just keep things together. When you start to doing something, and if it's your pet project, for example, if you do it like small, it will be okay. I mean, you don't need tests, everything is running smoothly and you are happy with it. But as soon as it started to become larger, you will start to see that when you're changing some things in one way, that there's something could be broken in the other part of your application. And even if you have the good code, even if you have a brilliant architecture, there's still some things that could require you additional time just to check. And all these moments when you are changing the logic in your part of the system, that they are still running together. And the tests is like to keep it in the shape when you introduce new changes. As soon as something is broken in the test suite, you will find out where exactly it's broken and where exactly it requires your attention. As we in our episodes often referencing to Magento, would you just imagine like how it will be to write Magento without tests? We actually can think about it when Magento 2.0 appeared. It was didn't have such a test coverage as it has these days, and how many issues and bugs were people and community facing those days, and how the situation improved with the time when the test coverage was extended. Yes, Vlad, please.
Yeah, so I would say even that when the Magento 2.0 has been released and all the Magento community started working on it, it was not common through the 90% of the developers to write the tests. Let's be honest. It was not common. There were like a 10% of people that were doing the testing, even for the Magento 1, the unit test, some of the functional tests, and etc. But that was not on an every company level. That was not a common thing to be done. And during the time evolution, it's actually Magento 2 has forced us as the very big system that we need to write the test to keep things in shape, as you mentioned, to make the regression over and over after every change you are making. And that's also another thing that tests helps you. They help you to make fast regression tests of all the functionalities that has been built before. Of course, if they were covered with a test, right? And that cannot be underestimated, because usually when you're writing the bad code, and there are a lot of people that are writing a bad code, you are fixing problem A, but breaking the functionality B that has been built up 3 years ago, and the people already gone that has built that, and no one knows how the hell does it work. And if it's not covered with test, someone will gonna find out that this functionality doesn't work only after 2 weeks, 3 months, you have delivered your fix for the problem A on a production. And then you have another circle of the problems running. So yeah, this regression, that's super important stuff. And totally agree with you. And the Magento community was not ready for such a complex system as the Magento 2, and they were forced to start doing the testing. And that has opened it there. Bright new door and bright new direction for all the developers, for the self-development, and also for the clients to get the better products with a higher enterprise level. Yeah, that's it.
I would disagree a little about the moment that you can write a bad code to break something. You can write even a good code and you also break something because you're just working with the system that has a lot of legacy that you just, because you're a human being, you're not ChatGPT that can absorb information instantly. You're just not aware that they exist. But you are totally right. And I personally know a lot of people who actually started to explore what is unit tests, what is a PHP unit, just because they started to contribute to Magento, and that was one of the requirements to actually to cover the newly introduced functionality or bug fixes with a test. So, Vitaly, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just believe it worth mentioning that in Magento world we have two things, which is Magento framework and our custom codes, and the requirements are different for both because like Magento has more risk as it is a library used by like thousands of merchants, and this is why they have need for this huge code coverage on multiple levels, starting from unit and ending up with load testing and penetration testing. We will talk about them further. And when it goes about our custom stores, it depends whether, because we not always need all of those tests and that huge amount of coverage. This is also need to be taken into account because I saw people go wild. They can copy Magento approach in custom stores, like covering everything with unit integration, static, AP functional end-to-end, and penetration and so on, or don't do test at all. But I believe the right approach gonna be find some like sweet spot that works for you.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I suggest let's sum up this first intro part. What is Autotest? We talked about it. There are many things. It just help you to get another tool to test things more often with a regression and so on and so on. I believe there are a lot of quality assurance engineers that could jump in the comments and tell us, we are wrong, it's a different thing. And you're totally right. We are developers, first of all. We are not quality assurance engineers. We have some area expertise there, but we are super happy to hear your opinion about that. But yeah, for us, that's something that helps to get the better quality and make the regressions and build up the highway, as Vitaly mentioned, to deliver things faster with less side effects. What are their purpose? Yeah, I already just told, right? And the problems it solves, yeah, to make sure the functionality that has been built before will keep working, the functionality that we have built are proper tested, and yeah, and sometimes even the monitoring of the system that you have on a production environment. You could always run some functional tests that are not changing anything on your system, but just double checking, is this button available? Can I add product to cart? Right? Don't pass the checkout or etc. Yeah. So that's I guess it. And we can move on to the second topic if you're okay with that.
I just want to jump in with another question. We mentioned it a few times, but still can someone to sum up like when I should start thinking about auto tests? Should it be something that I start from the first moment when I'm just starting my new pet project, or is there any criteria when the tests are required or nice to have or not needed?
And trying to
POV?
deliver it. Oh yeah, sorry, not a POV.
MVP?
Yeah,
No.
POV. Okay.
Monday.
Yeah. So when I can tell you, usually when I start in some pet project, I'm trying to do the MVP, minimum viable product, and there are barely any tests. But once it's get to the state where the bare minimum functionality that is okay for me, I'm covering with the tests because I will be adding something new and I don't want the old functionality that I built to be broken. So I'm starting doing that. But for the enterprise projects like e-commerce workshops and etc., as Vitaly mentioned, I'm covering all the business processes, right? So business process coverage is a must-have functionality. Custom business process coverage is a must-have. Sometimes even the third-party extensions that are getting installed and introducing some new business processes, if they don't have a proper proper testing, we do cover at least the happy case scenario with the automated testings, right? And that's actually what I'm doing. But there are also a lot of functionality around those business processes that are helping, supporting, or doing any other things. And here you're actually deciding, do you want to cover them or not? For me, is a marker that needs to be definitely covered is when you're getting the second problem in a row with this functional or with this class on a setter. Okay, it's time to cover it. Yeah.
True.
So second problem in a row you're getting it, or a third problem in the last half a year. It's
Same
something that
problem,
needs to be
different day,
covered.
right?
Yeah, same problem, different day. So don't be super crazy about the test. Don't cover everything as a maniac. Just define the sweet spot, as mentioned by Vitaly. Find the balance between what is super important for your client, for the business, and what is super important for you as well as a developer, because you see that some functionality could bring a lot of troubles, and focus on them. Don't cover everything. It's not needed.
Thank you. It's a good answer. Vitaly, do you have something to add? I know that you do.
Yeah, but it's hard to add something after Vlad. Maybe when it goes about, for example, some Magento processes that are not directly related to your business logic, it definitely doesn't make sense to cover everything there, because I would suggest to trust Magento framework because they have everything covered on their side. So I would definitely recommend to concentrate on custom stuff. But if, for example, it feels like you have no need to cover anything on your project, it might indicate that maybe Magento framework is not something that this project needs, because it's made for custom functionality. And if you don't have many custom functionality, you don't have need for automated tests. So most likely you don't need Magento. It's maybe better to
Maybe you
go
can
with
just go with Shopify.
yeah.
That makes sense. I'm also thinking that, well, yeah, we have the DevCommerce podcast, but still kind of if we put it on the level higher, just in the software engineering, the test coverage, it depends what the purpose of your application. If it's something that you are just creating, I don't know, for your own, some small application that probably you don't deep tests. If it's something like related to the commerce, when you have financial risks, well, yeah, it would be nice to have a more kind of invested into quality of your solution, because if something is broken, then you're losing money. The same, not the same, but even more serious if you're talking about some areas and business domains that are regulated, like, I don't know, medicine, finance, then you probably want to be sure that your product is of the really high quality. Otherwise, there will be a big consequences and unpleasant consequences for you and for your business. And when your software is responsible for someone's life or the stakes are really high, then you just trying to make everything possible just to be 100% confident that your software won't be a reason for a fault if something bad happens. There's like 4 different stages when you need to take care about quality and consequently need to invest into having the test coverage. Okay, good. I think that we are done with this topic and let's move forward. What actually kind of tests exist? What kind of tests you can find in the wild, and what kinds of tests you are practicing in your development? Guys, could you tell me? Want to be the first? Maybe you, Vitaly?
Yeah, easy. There are a lot of different kind of tests. They all have their own purpose. Let's maybe start with describing one by one, so it will be easier. Because if I name them all, it doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make much sense. Yeah. So let's start with static tests. So they are created just for checking whether our code is up to standards. They made are mostly for developers and make like code reviews and the code maintenance easier, especially long term, especially if you have huge distributed teams that are working, or multiple teams that are working on the same project. So there is need for having code be written in the same way. And static tests are made for checking that. Vlad, go ahead with this next one.
I can just jump in
Or
into the topic of static tests because you said
Mhm.
it's about the standards, and I agree, but there can be more because there are tests, static tests that are checking it's your alignment to your company standards, but there are also static tests that can check if you don't have any kind of potential issues in your code. I'm talking about, for example, if you have already started with Magento and they know that there are more than just Magento and eCommerce that's written on PHP, we can talk about PHP stand can not only test that your code is looking in the way that it should look, but it also can find bugs, potential bugs and issues in the code, like if you are using variable that doesn't exist or misusing types or etc. And it's making it a bit higher in the ranking, like what can be done with the static tests. But also, as for me, the perfect part that you don't really need to extend the coverage. It's like, I mean, if you introduce a new functionality, you don't need to write static tests to cover it, because basically static tests, they are working in the very abstract way, and it doesn't really matter how exactly this functionality tests. They can just check the code itself and report you any issues or potential issues or bugs without even knowing what the business purpose or how this particular code should work. That's also nice because you don't need to have any additional investments after starting using them.
Yeah, totally agree. So static test is the cool thing, and that's actually one of the easiest tests that you could implement for your code and for your system, but they're not delivering so much added value as the following tests. So we have actually gradation of how hard to implement the test and how much value does it bring to the system and to you. So the static tests are, I think, on the first level, so the first level, they're still valuable, they're cool. I'm running them as well. We also building up our own static tests to check out the dependencies between the extensions, making sure that everything is fine. Yeah. And on the second place, I would put the unit testing. I like unit testing. It's something that helps you to test the specific class or specific script that is taken without any context of the system it is in and operate it as the separate unit. That's why it's called unit test, to check how the functionality works inside this specific class, method, or the script, to check ins and outs and making sure that they works as expected. For example, you have a class called math and you have a function of multiplying. Yeah. So, and you have two parameters, though that's the two numbers that should be multiplied and the output, and you can just easily test it with those unit tests. You can test, does this function works properly or not? I will give the word to Alexander, right? Alexander, your turn to talk about the following test.
Yeah, I'm kind of just want to add to the unit tests because they are nice and they have a very particular purpose to test algorithm that your code is using. And this is really cool, but in practice, it's not something that you are, I don't know, at least in my practice, it's not something that I'm just working with every day. And the problem with unit tests that they often being overused. I saw that so many examples when the people are putting the unit tests in the places where they shouldn't be, like trying to mock database dependencies, trying to simulate some return data for testing the code that actually is supposed only to retrieve data and return it. It's creates very redundant tests coverage because you don't need to test these things with unit tests. You have other kind of tests that can handle this communication. For example, you can use integration tests that are just a level above. They are supposed to test the multiple components and how they integrate with each other. So if we are talking about the unit tests, that usually we are testing the single method. That's all external dependencies from this method. They are mocked and behavior is prescripted by you with mocks. In integration tests, you are not mocking things. You are testing it in the way that it should communicate between different components. For example, I don't know, if you are using something to cover tests with category and you're interacting with products, then there will be like two components, categories and product that are interacting with each other to provide you with a result. And in this way, you also can use the database to receive the data for this communication. And this is the proper way when you need to work with the data from the database, not using just a unit test. You probably need integration tests. In comparison with unit tests, the integration tests, they require more time to be created, and they require more sophisticated infrastructure, because it's not enough just to have a PHP running on your environment. You also need to handle some other resources where your application can depend on. Vitaly?
I'd like to speak about functional tests because I think those are more beneficial for us as for e-commerce developers, because they actually made for testing business logic. And more important part, they are also covering those parts that are being tested by integration and functional. And I believe the best practice is not to test the same functionality thrice. Very often is really great way to go with functional tests on your project. And nowadays, there are a lot of different frameworks that allow to write them easily. What do you think, guys?
Functional tests? Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the top tests to be used because they really emulate the real user experience from A to B, from end to end, and that's really great approach. It could not, though, cover many details that you could see as a developer if you would have developed the unit test or integration test, for example. But it serves the main purpose. It gives you understanding and the feeling as a developer that this functionality gonna work for the end user. And that's, I think, the most important part.
Yeah, I totally agree. Functional tests are really useful, but with them you should follow the Pareto principle, because putting 20% of effort will cover the most of your functional requirements, like 80%, and the rest 20% would require more 80% of effort to be covered. So it's not useful and not really kind of efficient to use them for testing edge cases, because generally you are working with software like a black box. You have an interface, whatever it's an API or it's a UI interface, and you testing how the feature works from the functional point of view. And covering the edge cases will lead for redundancy of the test coverage. And this also was to mention that this is expensive tool to work with, in order that can be fragile. Again, as you're working with a black box, you are not kind of covering all possible states of the code. So it would require more time to keep the coverage up to date. And it also require sophisticated infrastructure, because it's not only, as I said, PHP code, it would also require you to run in the whole instance, or if you are using something, not a monolith, that would require you to run in the whole kind of the solution, if multiple instances, to test how the system behaves. So basically, yeah, it could be considered as a triangular, that is, you have a different test coverage.
Could you tell more about this triangle? I didn't get it.
Yes. Okay, so I mean triangular, and then the base level, you have the static tests, then you have unit tests, then you have integration tests. There also could be like contract tests. Then there is a functional test, then is end-to-end test, and at the top you have a UI test. And basically, the forward you are moving to the top, the more expensive and sophisticated infrastructure required, and more expensive will be maintaining of these things. But also the quality and the improvements to the kind of the speed of delivery, new changes will be also improved the further you move to this structure.
I'd like also to add about costing of those tests, especially of end-to-end functional tests, because cost is being reduced over time. When you are working on those tests, you always bump up into some issues that need to be solved once, and you never go back to them. And also, you are developing fixtures are like sets of data sets that can be reused in other tests. So in the beginning, sometimes it takes to cover some maybe let's say, complex business logic as adding some, let's say, custom shipping method. It may take like 2 days, but when you work on functional tests, the tests for 2 years, it may reduce to like 4 hours or maybe even faster. So it really depends how long your project are leveraging functional tests. In the beginning, it's definitely more expensive. As I mentioned before, it's like building highway. In the beginning, when there is no highway and there are a lot of work to build this highway, but in the end, you are winning.
From a good analogy.
Could you explain me, guys, what is the difference between the functional test and end-to-end tests?
So you can, in functional tests, you can kind of mock some kind of third-party services that your system is using, and you can rely on this like pre-written responses or data payloads or whatever your system need to communicate with. So you're testing functionality, but in terms that the communication with third party is kind of mock. And the end-to-end tests, you are not mocking this communication, you are just having sandboxes and you are kind of running almost the production version on the test mode of your application. There are pros and cons, because if you are communicating with third party, then you are not always responsible what they will return you. So there could be false negatives when the third party is down or just for a maintenance or whatever, and your tests will be broken because of it.
Okay, I got it now. Thank you.
In fact, that both are kind of functional tests because both are testing functionality. Thank you. So, as Vitaly slowly started to talk about real life, not only about the theory, let's talk about practice. Like, does it actually work? What experience do you have with it? How it works in your projects for your clients? Could you share some real life examples?
Vitaly, you are one of the most auto-tested guys here. That said,
It will be an honor if you can start.
It's very important to understand the requirement of your project because different project has different requirements. And when it goes about e-commerce website, especially in B2B, it's more about like processes and automation. So I believe it's very important to cover all the custom, as we mentioned before, all the custom stuff. And recently, we are using only end-to-end and functional tests because, as I mentioned, they are testing system as a whole. And even if you have those integration tests, for example, that are testing only part of the system, and on top of it, you have functional tests that test everything, you end up testing same things twice. And then when you change your functionality, you need to change test twice. So in this particular case, it doesn't make sense to have both type of tests. It's better to have one type. It's easier to maintain. It's easier to change. It's easier to adjust. It's easier to write new tests because you have only one framework. And I would select that framework that tested more than less. So this is why we are using functional tests. But if we're library developer or framework developer, I would definitely use more because framework or library has higher requirements in terms of risks because more people are using it. In real life, for real e-commerce projects, I would prefer just this high-level functional and end-to-end tests. And also static tests for making sure that code is written in the same way. So, yeah.
Could you tell us like what exactly tools you are using? Is it PHP unit? What you're using also for static tests?
For static tests, we are using PHP code sniffer, and there are also tools from JetBrains, Gordana, or how it's called. I'm using it for pet projects, but in commerce project, I'm using PHP code sniffer, and yeah. And for functional testing, we are using Cypress.
Thank you. So Vlad, it's your turn. Tell us.
hi there. Hi there. I have an experience with the testing. You know what? I was even for 1.5 months the quality assurance engineer.
Oh my God.
10 years plus ago, I don't know.
Was
Anyway,
it manual or testing?
manual. Yeah, it was a
okay.
manual
So
testing.
basically you was auto test.
Yeah. Me, myself was that script, that auto testing things. Anyway, so long story short, currently, I will tell you what I'm currently using, and I'll tell you a couple stories from my past where teams and me, including me, were trying to cover things with the test and introduce automation testing. So currently, I'm using the code sniffer. I'm using the PHP stand from time to time. To be honest, not always, but that's very powerful tool. And sometimes on a very messy project, it's a must-have to set it up. Also using the unit tests. So I know you guys don't really like them, but I do really love how we could, with the help of the AI, cover the functionality and be sure that very, very dangerous things that you're changing will be caught by those unit tests on the fly while you're developing them on your local machine without waiting for a long time of the functional test or the integration test to be spin up and running. I'm also using the integration tests, but less than the functional test. And the functional test that I'm using the Playwright, not a Cypress, but a Playwright. And I'm mostly using it for the production testing. So let's say the monitoring testing of the functionality that we have. Right. I have in plans to introduce it for the staging environments or some of the sandbox environments to do whatever I like, place orders, I don't know, delete the database, whatever. But for now, that's in the current state. About my previous experience, me and Alexander, we used to work in one company for a long time, and there were quite a big topic to start introducing the functional tests. And it was moving, but moving slowly, relatively slowly at least. And I think we'll have some time to discuss the situation because that would be important, I believe, for many teams to understand how to do things and how to not do what will going to work, what will not going to work, at least from our perspective. We were not the people that were moving this process, but we were actually the consumers of those tests. We were developers and we were waiting from the quality assurance engineers to introduce those functionality tests. And it took quite a time to introduce some of the functional testing for a team. And yeah, it didn't work pretty well because of the various reasons. And one of them is the lack of the budget and the very precise timing on the time estimates and so on and so on. But also another reason that many people try to introduce the functional testing there, and most of those people, when they were starting, they had no experience with the functional testing at all, with automation testing at all, and they were learning on the fly. And once the critical mass of the people got the proper level of this knowledge, it started working, actually. Yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah, what else? I also worked with a couple companies that had testing as a standard. So you would not move any step without the functional testing or the unit testing or integration testing, whatever testing. One of them is Adobe, is the contributing to the open source, the same that you done, guys. And thanks to Alexander, he pulled up me there, and thanks to him, I actually learned how to write some of the low-level testing and how to introduce the pipelines, etc. Also, there were a couple other companies, and what has actually excited me is one of the companies there was a special department of the QAs. The quality assurance engineers were not the part of each team. They were just a separate team that come to you as to the team and help you to build up the process of the quality assurance. So they were not a quality assurance engineers, they were more like a quality assistant engineers, right?
Quality assurance architects.
Yeah, kind of. And that actually changed up a mind a bit for me to not thinking about there are QAs, there are QA or QC specialists that should focus on the quality, control the quality, but you as a developer and you whole as a team that develop, then deliver some functionality, you are responsible for everything, for the quality including. And you may not be specialist in this area, but there are people, special people, that could help you out to build up a process based on your needs and specifications. And that worked pretty good. So I learned a lot of things there. And we had the API testing, functional testing, unit testing, static testing, We didn't have the integration testing because we have actually invested a lot of time in a functional testing and API testing, and that covered that
Yes.
part. Yeah, that's what you actually told me. So that's in a few words about my experience. Sorry, it took a bit of more time than expected. Yeah, Alexander, giving the word to you. Thanks.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you. So from my experience, like we connect right now, we are working with static tests. We are using them on every project, and we are using also PHP unit and PHP unit for unit tests and for integration tests on the project, depending on the features that's required. So if it's something related to algorithmic or mapping, that's a unit tests. If it's something related to integrations, we are trying to cover it with integration tests tautology. But we are not using functional tests just because we see that for our infrastructure it will be some very excessive load. But these things really works cool if you have the big project with many developers, as Vitaly previously mentioned, where you need to then you need to build the highways. Yeah, when you have a budget to build that infrastructure. For small clients, it's usually just enough to work with static tests, and if you are actually doing something custom, that probably with the unit tests. So it's not only depends on the process, but also very depends on the budget. Here, I just want to slowly move on to the next question: how to speak with business about these things, because it's sometimes, especially if business representatives are not technical people, sometimes it's hard or could be even impossible to explain why do they need to invest into automated tests, or should actually they care about it? Should they just even hear these talks, or should be just by default when you are selling them some functionality, then you just include into the estimate that the time that it's required to write tests? Yeah, please, Vlad, go ahead.
Yeah, so my position and position of my company at Runners Root, we are the specialist and we know what to do better. And when their client comes to us, we tell to the client, okay, mate, it will gonna take this amount of time to deliver that because of the reasons, because of their risks. And we automatically include in this estimate and this timing, the time that we're gonna spend on the infrastructure to build out the highway with the tests. As we discussed, we're trying to find the sweet spot between what is really needed and what is not, but we are including there because we know better, not someone else. We are the specialists that know better what needs to be done and how that needs to be fixed. And that's my position, and I truly adore that. I truly try to push this position forward, and that's moving good. At first, the clients of ours could say, okay, yeah, but that's maybe too expensive. But afterwards, they see what quality are they getting. After that, they see how much effort they were spending afterwards. So that's much less effort to keep it supported. And they're saying, yeah, okay, that's the good one. That's how you're building up the kitchen, right? The guy comes to you and saying, this will going to cost you this X amount of money. And if this guy is good, he will going to take the good materials, he will prepare everything properly, and he will deliver everything with the right installation skills, right? And this kitchen will going to serve to you at your house. But if you're going to buy some bad materials and you'll hire some guy from the street that barely knows how to screw something, you'll have a very bad kitchen. And then you need to rebuild it, and then you come to the right guy again. And I'm saying this with so much confidence because we have experience with the clients that comes to us and saying, hey guys, we have huge problems in our projects. Help us. And then we are looking there, and guess what? Usually there are no tests, or tests are so poorly written that doesn't make sense. It's just a waste of money. That's it from my side.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you because it depends on the transparency and trust between you and the client. These things that are technically are not clear for a client very often could be overused just to sell some things that are not important for the business. I mean, in this thing that the communication should be really built on the partner level, that's the agency helping commerce business to become successful, not just using their money to write some tests that actually bring no value for them. Hey, Vitaly,
Yeah, I just
please.
wanted to add that there are also a glass ceiling functionality you can write without automated tests, because sometimes it happens that your customer has such a hairy requirements with a lot of variables needed to be taken into account, a lot of the cases that it's impossible to keep in your head. Like, no, unless you're some genius. Even I believe artificial intelligence can handle that. So you just have no choice but write those tests. So it's not always just about negotiation. Sometimes it has need. You cannot get away without them.
Yeah, I agree that if the project is big and this is more kind of the, let's say, product itself that's a lot of people are working on, I mean, the technical people, developers, then yeah, there's actually no way that you can keep it running for years without tests. Otherwise, it will end up very poorly. Probably this project will just come to the Vlad agency and they will ask to help to have a look that something is going wrong. From our best practices, including this thing. First of all, we are considering on the size of the client and the size of their customizations, because if there's not much custom things, and we are like talking with business that they are not expecting to build something really sophisticated and crazy with their store, then probably there will be just enough running static tests for new things that we introduce. And if we see that there's a client who are serious in the growth and expanding their commerce capacities, then of course we are always included into the quality and also explain what's included. Sometimes clients would tell that they are okay if they will do the QA part, then well, of course they're taking the risks on their side. And other times that we are doing automated tests as a part of the QA. So good that we talk about these things. Yeah, that topic that you mentioned a lot before about automated tests and the running it in the agencies, like, I mean, for the agencies itself, how to kick off the process of you need these things. Two kind of important things. That's the first, that's people who have no experience with automated tests will definitely spend more time on these things. And another thing that people who don't have experience with it, they usually underestimate the required investments, what they need to put to make these things work. Because
and
usually
overestimate the value.
And overestimate the value, true. Because usually the most classic example, and unfortunately I faced, I think it's multiple times, when someone comes with the idea that, okay, we can invest some X hours and then we have a test coverage, and then this test coverage will run on the project. So we need to spend N hours less on doing the QA and regression, etc. But then it continues in the practice. It actually works differently than when you invested X hours, then you also need to spend 8 hours for maintaining it, these tests, basically monthly or with any new features being introduced. And then you can save some hours for doing regression tests, but usually the time that's required you to maintain this test and introduce new coverage is higher than you're saving on doing the regression itself, which is kind of the paradox, because automated tests, there's not in terms of saving hours or money if you are running, let's say, some medium-sized project or a small project. It could work well if you have a lot of people who need to coordinate with each other, and in these cases, the introduction of test coverage will help them actually to have this communication, because if someone introducing new changes and from other person or team or whatever things are broken, then the easiest way to get know about it is by seeing the red X in your test build. That's my thoughts.
So yeah, you were referring to the times where some of the not really technical managers tried to measure the benefits of the automation tests, and everything that they were thinking about, it's the time difference.
True.
So you're spending the 10 hours on the regression testing of the project, but with automation test, if we invest I don't know, 30 hours, you're going to spend 2 hours on a regression, and you will going to run it definitely once a month, and it will going to be by, paid off in a year or something, and blah, blah. So I don't know, maybe currently with AI, that's will going to save you a time. But in the reality, most of the cases, it's not about the saving the time, as you mentioned. It's about the getting the higher level quality, next level quality. And many things are depending on the processes, but most of the things are dependent on the people that are introducing and using those tests. If there is a person not experienced with the automation tests and they don't know how to build them and how to introduce them and how to read them and how to develop them further, it's not going to make any sense. So you need to have someone in your team that tell you how things needs to be done and how to move further. Yeah, and that's going to work out, and that's what going to push your level of the quality upper without the significant investments, I would say. Yeah, Vitaly.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it very depends on project requirements, because that what manager says about saving time is true if you have a lot of regressions. Let's go with example. If you have one store, it's like one regression to go through checkout. If you have multiple stores, it's multiple regression, right? Then you add multiple type of products. So you need to go multiple time for multiple stores with multiple type of products. Then you have different shipments, like for maybe multi-shipping. So you need to go through all these processes with multi-shipping and single shipping. And it can adapt like infinitely. It depends on business, how business functioning. So what I would say, automated tests are more beneficial if you have more of these layers, because I believe doing those regressions are very tedious, boring, and it can introduce issues with like human factor, because we are all people, and automated tests are very precise, and the chance they catch up some bug is way higher. So I wouldn't throw away regressions, like they are important, but I wouldn't go like checking like everything, because it's for example, in our project, if we do manual regression for all the cases, it would take 2 weeks, I believe. And automated tests are taking like 2 hours or 3 hours to do everything. So of course we are saving time with them.
But how much time have you spent on building them up?
Again, in the beginning, it was harder. We have huge benefit in our company because we are our employee. We are not ordering work from agencies. So it's not as big as investment for our company to build those tests. So in the beginning, it took some time to implement everything, because Magento is not like walk in the park when you are building automated tests. There are some flows in framework, especially in Require.js, when you need to do some workarounds to make automated tests work properly, and they don't have a reliable framework themselves. They have this API functional framework, but I believe that it's not user friendly, so we have to use something else. Yeah, but again, we invested sometimes maybe months or two. I'm talking about one developer working months or two in the beginning, but over time it becomes easier and easier to implement new cases. When AI pops up, it even became easier, because working on automated tests with AI is it's so cool. It's even better than in just coding, because it can introduce those cases you not even think about it, and write tests way easier. You just need to like fine tune them a little bit here and there, and it's work fine. So this is why I would say nowadays having automated tests is not as crazy as before, and I would definitely recommend for every more or less middle and especially big business to have them. Yeah, I don't know what to add. As I just kind of slightly not agree that it's not safe and you have to do all this regression. No, it definitely helps with regressions for sure. Is it?
I'm not saying it's not helping. You listening me wrong. I'm saying it's not saving the time. most of the cases.
Yeah.
But if you have multi-tenant instance where you just substitute the URL to the website, of course it's going to save the time. But in most of the cases, your web shops, your e-commerce shops are 1, 2, 3, 5 URLs top. And looking at those tests on something that saves you time, I would not call that. Maybe in regressions in some of the cases, yes, but it's just wrongly to thinking about automation tests as something that saves you time. You need to think about it as something that gives you better quality.
Giving better quality saves you time because you don't go to.
At the end, yes, but have you calculated that as the managers of ours?
Yeah, this is having better quality because if something do not save your time, it doesn't make to introduce it. It doesn't make to work on it. If you spend more time, it means you're wasting business money.
Okay.
And automated tests,
So
they
you're
are
saying
actually saving
by
time.
introducing automation tests, you are just slightly moving the time that you would spend on a bug fixes to the business value, to the delivering some business value, right? So building the business features.
Yeah, it's easier to add new functionality. So it's faster to add new functionality.
Okay, yeah. I could agree with you here.
It's faster to do regression because you do
yeah, we know
part
that.
of work on automated tests. Then it's faster to develop because you can do test-driven development and it's faster.
It's test-driven development is faster only in case you know how to do that.
Yeah, but
imagine that half of the developers have no idea how to work that.
That's actually works with everything. If you know how to do things,
yeah,
they don't
that's the
take that
point.
much time that actually you need to investigate and learn them.
Yeah, for example, let's imagine why I saying that test-driven developer is faster. For example, you have requirement to create some new functionality for bundle products that can be triggered when you have 10 bundle products in your cart. So manually, you need to go to create 10 bundle product. You need to create customer. You need to create, for example, maybe you have some shipping rules. You also need to go to admin and create them. And it's way easier to create everything with tests and to do this stuff. Yeah, it's definitely about saving time. And the first thing we need to tell for business is automated tests save time. And everything about it is
I do not agree with you.
okay.
Yeah. Let me just spare this dispute.
I don't know.
Basically,
you're thinking of that every developer is like you are. Mate, there are a lot of mid-level developers
guys.
No,
calm down,
no,
calm down.
I'm
calm
talking.
Down. It
No.
depends.
It depends. It's a very good answer. It depends. We need a simple answer that will gonna hit into the point, and we'll find it here now.
I can try it. So
you won't try it.
I can try it, and you can tell me if it works or not. Let me just start to recap and think. So basically, what Vitaly is mentioned, and where I can agree or disagree, that the test can save your time. I agree with Vlad that sometimes it cannot save your time if you're working with some small and medium businesses. Sorry, not businesses, but small and medium projects, where basically there are not so many changes introduced and there's not so many people involved into working on this project. But just like Vitaly mentioned, that for example, if you have the project where the only regression itself would take 2 weeks, can you imagine this? That basically your delivery cycle cannot be shorter than 2 weeks. You can release only in 2 weeks just because you need to have a single person dedicated to make a regression for 2 weeks. In this case, you're just creating a bottlenecks like your capacities for delivery. And in this case, if you want to extend it, if you want to deliver new features or changes more often, then you need something that will do this regression much faster than actually the manual 2 weeks test. And in this case, the tests definitely make sense and they really save time. And moreover, they are allowing you faster delivery cycle. But from kind of trying to meet the things up, I would say that the test, it's not something that's need to be worried about if everything works for your client and for your project. So if everything is okay with the delivering things without tests, it probably you don't need them. If it's some, business that spend 20 or 30 hours monthly on development, well, it's very depends. Depends how many years they're supposing to run this platform, if they have a plans for extending and etc. But usually they don't need it. But if business is have ambitious goals and you see that there will be a lot of new customization, there will be a lot of people working on these things, you feel that actually here it will be nice to start introducing tests, because very soon the things will become very bad for the whole team. We will struggle with the quality and into building a proper delivery cycle with this project. So if everything is fine, then probably you don't need tests. But when you need them, basically you will understand that this is the moment where the tests would save the situation and make things better.
So when should I use tests? Well, it's gonna save me time.
You should feel it.
You should feel it. Yeah, okay, that's the good answer. I take it.
So basically, if you can, as you said, that your manager has counted everything in hours, for example,
No, our manager, Alexander, our manager.
Yeah, our manager. In case of Vitaly, yeah, you can purely calculate that the 2 weeks of manual regression is not an option for the project. So by introducing tests, we can turn these 2 weeks into 2 hours. Well, probably in a term of, I don't know, 2 or 3 years of doing these cycles, our investment into tests will be beneficial. Simple math.
Question: how the hell have you built the system that takes 2 weeks of the regression testing before the release?
If we have no automated tests, it would not be feasible, as I mentioned before, because there are too many variables.
Basically, I think like if you have more than one person who are full-time working on the project, it already makes sense to think about tests. In whatever level it could be, I don't know, integration or unit tests. The more people actually are working on the project, the higher you need to, climb this triangle, as we mentioned before. The more extended and robust coverage you need to have on your project to still keep things together and, allow to actually new features to be introduced and developed without spending 2 weeks on regression. Cool. Okay, guys. Well, this was a great discussion. Let's cover probably the last question. Tell me, I don't know, just briefly mentioned already, but let's just sum it up. Tell me 3 tools that are using for writing or running tests in your day-to-day, or what you would like to recommend others. Who can be the first? Yes, Vitaly.
Okay, 3 magnificent tools. I would start with AI generation tool. I'm using Juni from JetBrains, amazing one. So as for tests, I'm using Cypress, as mentioned before. I love this framework, absolutely incredible one. And third one, let's say GitHub Actions, because you need the environment to run tests somewhere.
Okay, fair. Vlad, your take?
Okay, my 3 tools. It's a Playwright. It's a Claude Code. And that's a GitLab pipelines.
What's the first one?
Playwright.
Yes.
What is that?
What is it?
It's like a Cypress but better, and it actually saves you a time.
Okay. So it only works with small and medium-sized merchants.
Yeah, if Microsoft will develop, yeah, okay. I will not gonna tell you any more. Just your opinion, please share it. What's your 3 tools, Mr. Smart Guy?
Thank you. So as that's PHP related, but I will say it's a Grump PHP. That's basically a composer plugin that allows you to make a setup of possible static analysis tools on your local environment, and whatever you are trying to introduce new changes and push them to the pipeline further, then all checks will run on your locals. You don't need to wait for builds to be run to actually receive that there is an issue in your code. The second one is that's either Cardano or Sonar Cube. It's basically tools that you can easily integrate into a pipeline, different kind of checks and static analysis for your code, including the security testing. And the third one, well, as you already started to talk about pipelines, well, we are using Jenkins. So far, we are happy with it. It's basically it's open source and very customizable. So that will be number 3. Okay, guys, cool. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for staying with us. And see you in the next episode.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.